You're still watching TVC Breakfast. We now take you all the way to the center of unity where we have Eshomo Imodu and Tijesu Adeoye in Abuja studio for the FCT Brief. The conversation is over to you in Accra now.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to FCT Brief. Thank you so much, Ria. And it's a beautiful Friday morning here in the FCT. Of course, the ground is heating up for the council elections, and that will be our focus for this morning. Good morning.
Good morning, Nigerians, and thank God it's Friday. TJ, tomorrow is election day.
Yes. And you know, the atmosphere is already heating up. Today is work-free day. According to yes, on Wiki. But
the coffee is starting 8 p.m.
Yes, but workers can, you know, sit at home and relax before
that's workers. How about those who are not who don't work in government? So they must get to their various destinations before 8 p.m.
Like us here.
Okay.
Well, let's go into what we have for you today. Good morning. We'll be reviewing development with far-reaching humanitarian and security implications, and that is all right. Let's quickly take a short break now. Don't go anywhere. We still have more for you on the program. We'll be right back. Thank you for staying with us. Now, in less than 24 hours from now, all eyes will be on the nation's capital as political parties test their structures, strategies, and grassroots appeal in the FCT Council elections. Across the 6 area councils of the Federal Capital Territory, voters will be heading to the polls on Saturday in a contest widely seen as more than just a local government exercise. For many parties, this election is a referendum on their organizational strength, voter mobilization capacity, and relevance ahead of future national contests. Historically, council elections in Abuja have served as a political barometer, revealing shifting alliances, voter sentiment, and the effectiveness of electoral reforms at the grassroots levels.
With growing conversations around transparency, voter turnout, and the credibility of the process under the watch of the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, stakeholders are keenly observing how the process unfolds. Will established parties consolidate their dominance, or will emerging forces redraw the political map of the capital? To help us review the stakes, the trends, and what today's vote means for Nigeria's democratic journey, we are joined by Ibrahim Farouk, Program Coordinator, Africa Division at Yaga Africa. Now, he will be offering insights into electoral integrity, citizen participation, and the broader implications of this council poll. Now, stay with us as we break down the numbers, the narratives, and the political signs that might emerge from the ballot. Nice to have you here this morning.
You're welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. Good morning. Thank God it's Friday.
Exactly. Thank God it's Friday. Yeah, the FCT Council poll, incidentally, is going to be the first tests of the recently signed 2026 Electoral Act. Would you say this will be a test for technology, transparency, or political will?
Thank you so much. Like you have said rightly, this would be the first time that the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, would be hosting or would be conducting elections, especially since the passage of the 2026 Electoral Act. But I think that we must also remember that the process for this election commenced while the 2022 Electoral Act was still in operation, and the notice of elections especially was given under the 2022 Electoral Act. But that notwithstanding, the elections are still going to hold tomorrow, and we're going to see residents, citizens of the FCT come out and cast their votes for different political parties and for those who would lead them at the local level for the next 4 years.
Well, now we have a new Electoral Act, and the FCT is often seen as a political barometer. Now, what would you say that this election will serve as a litmus test for that new Electoral Act ahead of the 2027 polls?
Definitely. The FCT area council elections, and as well as the by-elections that we usually have before a general election, are a litmus test for the Independent National Electoral Commission before the general elections. And you know that later in the year, they would have sub-national elections in Osun and Ekiti as well. So we'll definitely be looking forward to that. But this is the first litmus test, so to say, as we have the 2027 general elections around the corner. I know that one of the things that we'll keenly be observing would be the electronic transmission of results and to see how that would go. INEC has given us the assurance that they are ready. Even though I think that with every election, the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, will tell us that they are ready. We will wait and see as we observe the elections tomorrow how far INEC is ready and their preparedness for this. But very importantly, very keenly, we'll be keeping our eyes on the electronic transmission of results, the functionality of the BVAS machines, and the collation process and announcement of results.
Let's go practical. You must have observed the deployment of sensitive materials to all the 6 councils and all that. What would you say about the process so far? What you have observed, the deployment, the logistics, and all the interactions you've had with INEC, you've had interactions with the police, other security agencies. Are they well prepared for tomorrow's poll?
Well, so INEC has commenced the deployment of non-sensitive materials, and today we also have a team that will be observing the deployment of sensitive materials across the 6 area councils. We've also heard from the police, who are also going to be deploying officers and men, as well as other security agencies that are involved in these elections. Historically, the FCT elections have been peaceful, and so I think that citizens and residents do not have any reason to be afraid to come out and participate in the elections. But we are going to continue to observe the process, going to continue to engage with the election management body, with security agencies, to ensure that we have a credible and peaceful elections tomorrow.
Which is Wike, that is the FCT minister, playing a visibly dominant role in these upcoming elections, and opposition figures also heavily mobilizing. Can we still say this is a local election or a proxy battle for national relevance?
First and foremost, it is definitely a local election because these are elections for area councils. But I think that the second layer definitely is that it has national implications, because every political party wants to establish some level of relevance or dominance, especially in the nation's capital, which is a very important political space, like we all know. We have, I think, at least 16 political parties who are fielding candidates for the area council chairmen, for the councillors that we have across the different wards. Even though historically it has been a 2-horse race between the All Progressives Congress and the PDP in the past, you might recall that in 2022, the leadership, especially when it came to winning chairmanship seats, was evenly split between these 2 political parties, with each of them winning 3 area council chairmanship positions. But political dynamics have changed between 2022 and 2026, where we currently are at. We've seen the emergence of political coalitions, new parties as well, who are also going to test their strength at the ballot and see whether citizens have accepted them or will accept what they are offering and what they are bringing to the table. But when we see national figures like the Minister of the FCT getting heavily involved in the political process of an area council election, or a local elections like you call it, you definitely know that there's also some national significance and a need to deliver your polling unit or deliver your ward, like our politicians say.
Okay, let's look at this. We say it's a local election. Now, probably that is the reason why when it comes to local election, the kind of interest Nigerians deploy is lower compared to when you have a presidential election or a governorship or a National Assembly election. But help the resident and the voters understand how important are the local council to their well-being, so that they will understand that if you are a registered voter, you should come out and don't just look at it as local election.
So local elections, or in our own case, area council elections in the FCT, are actually the most important elections that we can have, because the local councils have their functions that are different and distinct from what we have at a subnational level, which is the state government, or at a federal level. Unfortunately, a lot of citizens believe that the buck stops at the president's table for every single thing that happens in your community. But when it comes to issues around education, around primary health care, around waste disposal, around the management of markets, for instance, many of these functions are the functions of the area councils. You would recall that a few months ago, teachers in the FCT went on strike, and students were unable to have quality education for a number of months. This was purely an area council, a local issue that needed to be resolved between the leadership of the area councils and the teachers' unions in the FCT. That is how important it is. It's as important as affecting the education of your children. When we go to our primary healthcare centers, for instance, and you're unable to access basic medication, that is also a function of the local council elections. Unfortunately, what we have seen is very low voters turnout, high voter apathy, or a lack of interest in what happens in our local government or area council elections. In 2022, voter turnout was at 9% in the FCT. Wow. So less than 10% of registered voters in the FCT came out to determine the men and women who are going to be making decisions for us at a local level. I think I also just have to make this point that at least for the Abuja Municipal Area Council, AMAC, it receives one of the highest allocations that any area council or local government area in the state receives, one of the highest. So that means that there's a lot of resources that is available to the local government chairman and the councillors to work. But we are not paying attention to it, we are not holding them accountable, and it seems that we wait until after every 4 years when they come to campaign, and then we decide who we want to vote for, and then we go back to sleep and wait for the next area council election.
Yeah, if we're talking about an election on Saturday in the FCT, now the burden, like we said earlier, it's on INEC to deliver. And what are those things you'll expect that they will have to do differently from the previous way the FCT elections have been conducted, and also from the voter perspective? What are those expectations? Okay, I'm a voter, I move to the polling unit. What's expected of me till the point of announcements?
So I think one of the expectations that citizens have of INEC, first of all, is to ensure that there is effective and efficient deployment of logistics. And what this means is that materials required for the election arrive at each and every polling unit across the area councils. And I think we have over 2,000 polling units across the 6 area councils, and that materials arrive on time, materials are sufficient, and that the BVAS machine is also functioning optimally and efficiently. In the event that the BVAS machine is not functioning, meaning that when a voter or a prospective voter goes to the polling unit and the machine does not accredit him or her using either a fingerprint or facial recognition, INEC is able to very quickly replace that machine so that the process can continue. But for citizens as well, we also have our duties and obligations. One is to show up on election day with your permanent voter's card to come out and vote. There is this saying about elections in the FCT that on election day, you would find citizens playing football on the streets of Abuja instead of going to vote. I think this is an opportunity to change that narrative, because the voting process is also very easy and very seamless as long as you have your permanent voter's card, your PVC, that very important piece of plastic that allows you to go to the polling unit where you would approach an assistant presiding officer who verifies that you are the correct polling unit, and they will check your name against the voters register, and then you would go, there's another APO who would accredit you using the BVAS machine, and the BVAS machine would either read your thumbprint or your facial recognition, and it accredits you. Why accreditation is very important is because that BVAS machine counts the number of people who have been accredited to come out and vote. In the event that the number of votes cast exceed the number of those accredited, you know that there has been overvoting or some sort of manipulation of the process. But after accreditation, you're given 2 ballot papers, one for the chairmanship election, the other one for the councillor of your ward. You now proceed to the voting cubicle, which is a closed system where no one can see who you're going to thumbprint. And please ensure, because this is a secret ballot, no one is supposed to go there to assist you unless you require assistance, especially for people who are visually impaired, for instance. And then you would thumbprint and ensure that you thumbprint within the box so that you clearly indicate the choice of the political party or the candidate that you want to vote for. Why this is also important is that if your thumbprint marks more than one box, when it comes to sorting and counting, it will be counted as a spoiled ballot, and your vote will not count. And so it's also advised that after you thumbprint, not to fold it this way in such a way that the ink might touch another box, but maybe to fold it this way so that the ink does not stain another box. And then you can now proceed to the ballot boxes that have been placed there, and now put in your ballot paper for the chairmanship election and for the councillorship elections. Voting would open from 8 a.m. and would continue to about 2:30. For those who, after accreditation and voting, want to go home and then come back later to observe sorting and counting, and as well as the filling of the form EC8A and pasting it there in the polling unit, you're allowed to do so. But if you want to wait and protect your votes, you're also able to wait, I think, at least 200 meters.
Which is the best thing to do.
Well, which is the best thing to do. So make sure you grab your coffee and maybe some snacks so that you can remain there at the polling unit. Also remember that campaigning is not allowed at the polling unit. You're not allowed to wear any political party paraphernalia or anything indicating that you belong to one political party or another. I think finally we also need to sound a note of warning about vote buying. We talk about our politicians being vote buyers, but citizens are also willing to sell their vote. So where you have a willing buyer and a willing seller, the transaction takes place.
Both are criminals.
Both are criminals. So I think we just call on our security agencies to be on alert to prevent any sort of vote buying and vote selling, to ensure that we have a credible process and that at the end of the day, the results truly reflect the will of the citizens and residents of the FCT.
Now, you spoke earlier about, voter turnout in the FCT being at a staggering 20%.
9%.
9%. And now we are going to have this election. How would you say this, where will you place this lack of interest? Would you call it voter apathy, or is a silent protest on the part of, the citizenry within this region that, they've lost total interest in the institution to conduct elections, and they just have this sense of my vote doesn't count anyway, and they just go about whatever they're doing?
I think it's a combination of many different factors. One, there is very low levels of awareness and sensitization around the elections. And I have spoken to young people in the past week who have told me that they have no idea that there are area council elections that are going to happen on the 21st of February. This sensitization needs to be increased by election management bodies and as well as stakeholders in the process, including civil society organizations, security agencies, our friends in the media, as much as possible, but also political parties. Because very importantly is that political parties and candidates are the greatest beneficiaries of this process. Because I'm not going to go and vote for TJ or vote for someone else on election day. And we're voting for politicians who also have a role to play. Maybe our politicians understand that when there is low voter turnout, it's a lot easier to manipulate the elections. So we must reverse that trend of local government, very low turnout in our area council elections. We're confident that with a lot of the work that has gone in by different stakeholders, we would see a remarkable improvement in turnout levels. But you also spoke about that lack of trust in our institutions, and citizens believe that our votes do not count. This is also speaking to INEC's ability to manage the elections, build public confidence and trust, ensure that, and I spoke about it earlier, efficient deployment. That builds confidence that once we see that deployment of logistics is efficient, the process is seamless, the election results truly reflects the will of the people. Over time, that culture of participation and turnout will improve as well.
Okay, let's talk a bit about security. For some, security presence threatens their freedom, and to others, security presence gives them confidence. As a journalist covering the election, I've gone to places where seeing security men around gives me a lot of confidence, generally volatile areas, because I know that whatever happens, I have a safe place to run into. Let's take a look at tomorrow. With this, the hype of the election, we just talked about presence of the minister, the political leaders, all getting interested in the security deployment. To what extent will it build confidence in voters to come out or do you think it will threaten them to come out to vote?
So the presence of security agents and officers at our polling units is actually to build confidence in the process, that you can come and cast your vote, exercise your civic duty peacefully without fear of harassment or being attacked, regardless of your different political choices. It would also interest you to note that at the polling units, we usually do not have armed security officials, and that is also to further give citizens a sense that this is a safe space where you can come and peacefully carry out your civic duty. We have engaged with the police. We have received reassurances from the police and the security agencies that they are going to deploy. The police actually has a specialized unit on election security now, which is something that we haven't had in the past, and I think we must give kudos to them for that. But again, we'll continue to observe the process. But as we speak to citizens, it is to encourage you not to have fear that security agents and officers are there to harass you, but rather they are there to ensure that we have a peaceful process during the elections tomorrow.
Let's come back to this new Electoral Act. Do you believe that, these recent amendments would or will rebuild trust in the electoral system that Nigeria has currently, or do you think this will further deepen the distrust?
I think that the most contentious issue with the current electoral law is in section 60, subsection 3, around electronic transmission of results, and the proviso about what happens when electronic transmission fails and reverting to the manual form EC8A. The principle behind it was essentially to build citizens' confidence and trust in the process, to say that as soon as votes are sorted and counted, the form EC8A is filled, the BVAS machine is used, a picture is taken, and it is uploaded to the IREV. In the case of any dispute that goes to the court or a need to ensure that you have some sort of backup, you can use what is electronically transmitted, because our collation process is where a lot of manipulation happens. Mm-hmm. And you now cut out those manipulations that happen during collation or transmission from the polling unit to the ward collation center. But with this proviso now, it has thrown up a lot of uncertainty, about legitimacy and hierarchy of what happens if a matter goes to court, where, for instance, electronic transmission failed and you had to revert to the manual use of the form EC8A. What we hope to see, especially in the subnational elections, in the FCT elections, and in 2027, is electronic transmission working optimally. Mm-hmm. Citizens believe that the votes that were cast at the polling unit is what is recorded, is what was transmitted to the IREV, and the collation process truly reflects the votes that were counted.
Very quickly, and a follow-up to that, just before we let you go, don't you think this whole noise on this electronic transmission is sort of like a distraction? Because there are many other amendments that I feel that Nigerians should be paying attention to. Take a look at the removal of the indirect mode of conducting primaries for political elections. I think that is the ground, the foundation of any election, and for that critical amendment to be made, and people are not really paying attention to it, is just the transmission of electronic transmission of results. Don't you think that that is sort of like a distraction from other main issues?
Well, elections are a process, and I think we must also, and I agree with you that yes, the mode of political primaries, which has now been codified in the Electoral Act, is very important. I think another important aspect of the new act is that citizens can now download their voters' cards from the INEC website. What this means is after you've registered, for whatsoever reason you are not able to receive your plastic voters card from INEC, or you went to collect it and it was not there, you can download it. If it was lost, you can download it. We believe that this would also help to increase citizens' participation, increase the levels of turnout. But throughout the process, I think we have noticed that one of the major gaps in our process is with transmission and collation. That is why there's been a lot of noise, like you call it, but I would call it a lot more attention focused on electronic transmission, because that goes a long way in building confidence in the process.
All right, thank you so much, Ibrahim Farouk. It's a pleasure speaking with you in the last 30 minutes. We do hope to see more voter turnout tomorrow in the elections, and of course, we'll be observing the whole situation. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for being a part of our conversation. We'll now hand you over to Lagos, where Ria and the rest of the team are standing by to continue with the rest of the show.
All right, thank you so much, Abuja. A fantastic conversation from Abuja. Thank you.